The Midnight Club is a new show on Netflix created by Mike Flanagan and is a show that came out 2 weeks ago. But since it's Halloween and I thought this would be a perfect time to upload a review of it, I decided to finally binge watch it because I got some time and to talk about it with you guys. This show takes place in a hospice, which is upstate, where a bunch of kids are essentially living who have terminal diseases. And all of them have very limited time left. There's also a club, which is essentially formed over there, called the Midnight Club, where the kids can share spooky stories. But it turns out there might be some miracles associated with this place. A potential possibility that someone could actually walk out of there alive and cured. But there's also a spooky story happening in real life along the lines, and so gotta deal with that too. As far as the horror genre goes, Mike Flanagan is kind of the modern king of that at the moment. This man has not missed for me even once. And naturally, whenever it comes to a new project that he's handling, I'm very excited to see what he'll bring to the table and what more he'll do with the genre. But what I've really liked about all of his projects is they all deal with something which is at its core a human emotion that is escalated into a horror format. And I know the term escalated horror gets a lot of flack, but that's not what I meant. What I meant to say was that it'll take something, a tragedy, something human that we all witness, and bring that forward as the horrifying aspect, not so much the creepy, ghoulish creatures that might be there in the background. And the Midnight Club, once again, excels at that in spades. This is a show that at its core is a meditation on the inevitability of death and essentially coming to terms with that. In the first episode, Heather Langenkamp's character says something which really stuck with me, which was there's always very violent and visceral terms which are used for, dealing with illnesses, like we're fighting against cancer, the battle against cancer, we won the war. But the thing is, they're always so negative in the connotations, like battle and war. But in reality, when we come here to this facility, it's not about doing that. It's about living with it. It's about, finding the way to keep moving forward. And something about that was just really powerful, because the show is essentially about hey, this sucks, but that doesn't mean you spend every day for the rest of whatever time you have left worrying about the end. You now have to think about what do you do with the time that you have, and essentially trying to make the most of that. And I think that is a beautiful message. I mean, haven't we all had those days, you think about it, where everything is eventually going to end, we're not going to be here forever. But what's the legacy you leave behind? What happens next, And so you try and live each and every day to the fullest and try to find meaning in each and every one of those days in order to basically, try to find something to hold on to. And when the show is exploring it as well as it does in the Midnight Club, I think that speaks volumes to how much Flanagan wants to tap into that. Every show of his has this emotional reaction, which is sort of elicited from the viewers. And so naturally, it makes sense that this one elicits that. And it did with me. And it's helped because of the really powerful performances that the entire cast is giving. These kids are remarkable. And each one of them is dealing with their own issues, their own stories, their own, consequences of their actions in some cases, and, the things that have led them to this moment. And I think each and every one of them is handled perfectly. The stories that each character is telling, it deals with those, and it deals with sort of finding some kind of catharsis through that. Because if you cannot escape some inevitabilities, stories are the best way to essentially make you deal with those and to be able to kind of, find the sort of, the treasure in the junk, as it were. I don't know, that's a bad metaphor, but essentially that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's also wonderfully written for the most part. I think it's a really well done character study first and foremost. But I think if you want to go in for something more scary and spooky and horrifying, you won't necessarily get that. This one definitely tones down the horror in considerable ways. This is more, again, focused on the baseline human emotion in terms of horror, which I think is fine. But if you're going into this expecting more scares, you might be a little disappointed with the Midnight Club because it's not quite that. But I think what the show is at its core, I think that works really really well. But yeah, the show isn't necessarily scary. The things that'll keep me up at night are not the creepy things that you see every now and then, or the visions you see in a mirror every now and then, or something like that. That's not what's gonna keep me up. It's the thought of life. It's the thought of what happens next. I keep going back to this. It's a very powerful theme. And it's wonderfully done. It's also a spectacularly shot show. The production design, the way the house is constructed is amazing. There are aspects of this that are similar to Flanagan's earlier shows. There's also a cult thing involved in here, which has someone common in cast with Midnight Mass from last year. And you probably know who it is, but still, it was like, oh, of course. But I really like how they handle that whole thing too. I think the subplots at times, they don't quite mesh together as well as Flanagan's earlier projects. He's not done this one alone. It's with other collaborators as well, but that's not a problem per se. It's just that there are times where it's not quite as cohesive and as tightly strung together as everything else has been in the past. But that's not to say it's bad in any sense of the word. It's just it definitely is a bit wobbly at times. But I think the show still manages to regain its footing and still manages to create a very solid show. And all the things that happen throughout the episodes with the characters, and eventually you get so close to them that you kind of want to reach out through the screen and give every one of them a hug, even though it's just like, I know what some of this can do, and I know you guys are like holding on to hope, especially our main character, because she believes that there could be a potential cure because someone got cured many, many years ago. But that concept of it also is like, it doesn't always really work. I mean, it seems like maybe in some cases people just got lucky. In this particular case, it's just luck. What we can't really do anything about it after a certain point, which I also thought was important. It just sort of factored into the theme that was being discussed. However, I don't necessarily see this as a series. I know that the title of this video says series review, but Mike Flanagan has said he wants to do a season 2 potentially, and this has aspects of it that could easily make a second season, so I'm hoping that they get a chance to do that someday. I mean, I think it would be a really cool idea to explore this story a lot more and to see where else it goes, because we're still with a lot of these characters by the end of it. And so I am hopefully excited to see what the future holds for the Midnight Club. But as it stands, I think the show mostly works. Yes, there are some issues here and there. It's not quite as perfect. And there are definitely things that could be improved upon, but thanks to the terrific performances, the thematic handling of those elements, and how it manages to eventually bring them together, I think are handled really, really nicely. Yes, it does not have as many scares as usual, but again, like I said, the scare is really in those heartfelt moments, That's the true horror in most Flanagan projects. And I think that's handled here wonderfully once again. I'm gonna give the Midnight Club an A-. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. Have you guys seen the Midnight Club? What did you think about it? Actually, I'll ask you a question. What's your favorite Mike Flanagan project? Let me know in the comments down below. There's so many to choose from, movies and shows. I mean, really, the world's your oyster in that regard. As always, if you like this, guys, please do subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and wish you all a very happy Halloween.